Welcome back. Today we'll talk about how you can change what you see on your screen. And once you've created your project, you will see two open files, the main activity file and the activity main XML file. For this lesson, we will talk about the XML file. Android draws stuff on the screen by using something called views. And views are tiny sections of your view, like a button or a text field or an input text. But views can also contain other views, and they are called layouts. So a view can also describe your whole screen, or like a form or something. In Android there are two ways to define views and layouts, either through code or through XML.
So defining your views through XML. When you open your XML file, on the bottom you will see two tabs. One is called the Design tab and one is called the Text tab. In the Text tab, you will see the XML file in its text format. So this is the raw file that the computer will read. The Design tab will show you a preview of what the design will look like when it's actually rendered on the screen. So let's have a look at the Design tab. When you open the Design tab and select one of the components inside of this preview, the values of the selected component, its parameters, its attributes will appear on the right side here. You can also open the component tree, which shows the view hierarchy in your layout on the left side here. On the top you'll find the palette, where you can find a bunch of views that are provided by Android. This is by no means all views that exist, but this is a small collection that you usually use. If we switch over to the Text tab, you can see an XML representation of your layout. And this might seem cluttered at first, but for specific tasks and to be very precise, you should work here. This is the actual content of your layout. So if you edit something in the Design tab, it will change in the Text tab as well. If you change something in the Text tab, the design will update as well. This is a different representation of the same thing. When the system creates what to show on the screen, it will read the layout XML file in its XML presentation, parse it, and then translate it into view instances that will be rendered on the screen. For this lesson, we will show you the three main layouts that are usually used to create your views. The easiest, simplest, and most basic one is called FrameLayout. It's also the very least expensive to render. So in cases where this layout will be enough to show what you want to show, you should use it because it will increase app performance. Being so simple, it has few options for arranging views. You arrange your views only with the layout's gravity attribute. That means that you can center views or attach them to any side or any corner. As soon as you want multiple views next to each other, frame layouts reach their limit fast.
The layout to show views either next to each other or like in a list is the linear layout. Linear layouts have an orientation property, which is either horizontal or vertical, and you can set the dimension of the views inside of this layout by the layout weight. So the layout weight is the way to describe the relation between the child views inside of the layout. When you use the layout weight, make sure that your width or height of the view is set to 0 dp, because otherwise it will produce very unexpected results. That means if you have like two views inside of your linear layout and you set the layout weight of one of them to 1 and the other to 2, one will get 1/3 and the other get 2/3 of the space inside of the layout. There's one useful trick with the linear layout. So let's say you have three views next to each other and you want the one in the middle to take up our remaining space so that your whole layout width is filled. What you can do now is for the first and the third view, you will set the layout width for wrap content or a fixed width, and for the view in the middle, you will set the layout weight to 1 and the layout width to 0 dp. And then it will Android will automatically give the remaining space to the view in the middle.
There's one legacy layout that's called the relative layout. Legacy because in the past it was used to arrange views in relation to one another. So depending on rules, one view would be attached to the right side of another view, for example. But this layout was limited in its setup. So in 2016 it was superseded by the constraint layout. And nowadays I know very little people who still use the relative layout. So the last layout that we'll talk about is the constraint layout. The constraint layout is the most complex but the most powerful layout. It's arranging its views by applying constraints, and constraints are basically rules on how views are arranged in respect to other views or in respect to the parent layout itself. In the Design tab, you can see that these constraints are visualized with squiggly lines connecting the views. Inside of a constraint layout, there are three modes of sizing views. Wrap content, the same exists in other layouts as well, which means the view will decide for itself how much space it needs, then size itself according to that. Every view will take up space differently. For example, for text views, it usually means that the view will be the size of the text inside of it. Setting a fixed size means this view will always be the size that you set for it in the layout editor. It will not change depending on its content or on any size constraints from the outside. It will always have its own size. And the third way of sizing a view is to set it to match constraints. This property is unique to the constraint layout, and it means that the view will take up as much space as the constraints that are applied to it will allow it to take up. So for a view attached to either end of the container layout, this usually means it will take up the whole screen from edge to edge, minus margins or paddings. Even though there's match constraint option in the Design tab, this doesn't exist in XML, where as a substitute 0 dp is used.
So these have been 4 of the main layout, or 1 deprecated one and 3 main layouts for Android development in 2020. And there are some other layouts. One of them is the recycler view, which is for showing a list with lots of entries on your screen. But this is a very complex one, and we'll make a dedicated video for it. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Bye.